Welcome back, everyone. We are resuming the discussion that I'm having with my guest, Volodymyr Korol, an international relations student and philosopher. But I just want to put all of this again in context. Volodymyr and we're here to discuss some ideas and issues that each one of us cares about. And maybe we succeed in coming to an agreement, or maybe not. But it's not just up to us. There are other people out there watching, listening, thinking, and judging what makes the most sense. So, all of you viewers, if what either of us is saying resonates with you, please go ahead and support our ideas in your ideological profile in Egora. We all share in the power here. Okay, round two. This is your idea. Lay it on me.
Okay, so I want to speak about the creativity, and my idea itself, it is called "There Can Be No Monopoly on Creativity." What the idea is about, some statistics, they show us that in modern economy, the role of creative professions, they basically just increase. In last century, these professionals were an occupation for 10% of working Americans. In last decade, for 33%. And but I remember that there has been such a great phrase which says creative people are the main resource of modern economy. Moreover, nowadays, as we may see countries, they rarely pay attention to the specific property of this resource, its mobility. Unlike oil, which will not run away anywhere, creative people can easily change their place of residence. Comparing many factors that determine the attractiveness of a country for creative people, the United States can easily lose its leading position in the global economy if they do not make themselves more attractive to creative people from around the world. So basically, my idea is about that we have no need and we have no right to impose some sort of standards on people's creativity. If the person wants to obtain any sort of creative degree or to work in the creative sphere, we have no right to determine whether the person has to do it or whether the person is not allowed to. So that is basically my idea. Do you support it or not?
Um, so, first of all, I thought you were going to read this idea word for word, just so we could all have a proper reading of it. Because I must say, there at the end, you were adding or you were saying things that are not actually contained within the text of the idea. You were elaborating on it, but your elaboration actually was, I think, the real idea, because the text of this idea itself is much of the commentary, and it's very interesting commentary about, I really like this perspective. Creative people are the main resource of the modern economy, as well as that people do not pay attention to the specific property of this resource, which is mobility. I mean, that's like a really great observation. Um, but the essential thing that you said, I'm kind of not finding that here in the text, and I think that's kind of what's missing, because that's the thing that people really need to be reminded of. That's the real takeaway: is what do we do to to actually make sure that creative people are retained or attracted even by certain countries. So yeah, it's I don't, I don't know. Can you comment on that, or am I not seeing something in the text in the text of this idea as it currently is?
Well, basically, the text of the idea itself is not intended to show the whole idea to the people, because by having this conversation right now, we are having this idea developed and I am trying to introduce it step by step. So that way I'll be able to provide people who watch us, people who listen to us, with the description of this idea and the meaning why I think it is essential. So during the conversation we'll be having right now, I'll be working on developing the idea in whole, because right now what I just read, it was only the part of the whole idea itself. Because again, if we are talking about the creativity, it's very hard to describe it in a few sentences.
Oh, wait, so this idea is still under development. Is there going to be more content that because that's the thing. Honestly, the parts that you added, that you elaborated with, that was very valuable. But I actually don't remember what it was because in the course of this analysis, I actually missed that because I was trying to find it in the text. So can you remind me again? What is your method for what is the solution here? The specific proposition.
Well, the specific proposition up here is basically not imposing personal thoughts on the people who want to develop themselves in the creative field, and not making them living to a standards. If the person wants to be a singer or a writer, you cannot just forcefully push him to be a lawyer or any kind of economist. And that is the main point I'm trying to show here. At the same time, another main point is that the creativity can be easily widespread among the globe. Nowadays, when we have almost everything globalized, the creativity is not an exclusion, of course. So creative people, as I said, can easily change their place of residence, and in this way it is harder for the government or for social groups to impose living standards of above mentioned on the creative people.
A part of that, from what you said, this kind of imposition of what somebody should be, some of that to me resonates more with the parents imposing their will on children rather than the government imposing their
Yeah,
will on its citizens. So, are you actually focusing this more on family life or on government?
I'm focusing this both because from the very young childhood, the parents, of course, they do have greater part of influence on their children, on their development, and they are able to determine the way their children will develop. But when small kid is becoming a member of society, the society itself imposes some sort of things, and there are a lot of people who were supposed to be some sort of creative singers, creative writers, any other occupation which requires lots of creativity. But at that point of time, the society has imposed its measures and directed the person into the other way. So simply, we have an example up here in the USSR when the person was telling the person he was speaking to, or his parents, or his roommate in a college, that I'm willing to be a singer, I'm willing to be a musician, and another person or the parents were saying, no, you have to go to work to a factory or any stuff like this, which requires zero creativity. And that was destroying a lot of childish dreams, and that was determining the fact that a lot of creative people were simply not let to be as they was striving to be.
This relates to this other concept of brain drain, of a country losing its educated population for, well, whatever. I mean, it's creativity, but also people who have had high uh, human capital investment in developing themselves, emigrating to somewhere else. So it's very much related to that. Just one is, I think, more biological. Creativity, maybe it's more biological, whereas brain drain might, well, it could also be biological, but it could also just have to do with, the investment. But that's definitely something that countries have to pay attention to. And um, the U.S. kind of has been always attracting these people. All these, so many of these immigrants have been looking for a better life in the U.S., really creating a brain drain in those other countries and attracting it to the U.S. But it could possibly reverse, and it's at a certain point. I don't know in what situation the U.S. is right now exactly, as far as whether it has an influx or an, I don't know, what's outflow of creative and educated people. I mean, it certainly still does from many countries. But then at the end of this idea, it says that Sweden is now in first place as the most attractive place to creative people. Now, I don't know if that means that they're actually having an influx of creating people. Maybe creative people are just happier there, but does that mean that they're going over there? Maybe creative people are still, even though maybe they're not as happy in the US, they still have more opportunities just because it's a bigger country with a lot more happening and not being like so close to the Arctic Circle. California is still California. It's still not Sweden, for better or worse. Um, you know what? So, as far as supporting an idea that would address this problem, I would like this idea to have more content about how to actually solve the brain drain and the creativity drain within the population. Um, and So some of that is, I guess, having a pretty liberal society, a very tolerant society, which I think definitely the U.S. is doing, and so are Sweden. Um, maybe more of for example, tolerance towards same-sex marriages. That could be a very big effect. Maybe not that creative people are all same-sex or gay or lesbian, but maybe they just identify more within a society that accepts that. So they just want to be where people are more free, just by association. Just with freedom. So that's like a specific maybe solution. I don't know what other things there are, but I think those would be topics and for solutions that would be really worth including in an idea like this. Actually demonstrating the value of having liberal policies on things like this, as it pertains to brain drain and creativity drain. I don't know. Can you elaborate on that? Are there some other thoughts that you could?
Well, I guess each of us sometimes had to know a friend or a roommate or just a person that originally has the intention to become the person of creativity, either singer, either songwriter, but for some reason, someone else has determined the way the person was intended to and simply ruined his dreams and ruined his whole life flow. And what I'm trying to say already here is that the less we try to impose our living standards and our thoughts on other people, the better we are making the whole system and the whole world.
You know, I agree, But again, the interesting part comes in between the separation in the role of government versus the role of culture, including parents and the household. Because then, what's interesting, I think, like really creative people who really want to communicate something, they will actually rebel against that repression, and they will still create. They will still, maybe they're told to, go work in the factory, but they're still going to buy a guitar or whatever and play the guitar at night and maybe stream it on YouTube and still make it that way. So sometimes having that pushback is actually what helps people develop themselves. It actually helps to solidify their will towards it. And sometimes it actually maybe really does help to get some people, dissuade people from, pursuing a career that they actually don't really have much of a chance in, and maybe they would be disappointed. And I don't know. So there is that. I think that's, as a culture, I'm saying there is some value to actually to having some pushback. Now, as far as the government and the laws about restricting, that might actually be easier to address, because, like, if you think about it, if you do have like a same-sex couple, and let's say one of those people is a brilliant pianist, right? And they cannot get married in a certain country, but they want to be married. Well, if they can emigrate to another country where they can get married and live a normal life, well, then that country is going to lose that brilliant pianist and potentially their spouse, who might also be a creative person in another way. So, that's one argument for like legalization of same-sex marriage. And I'm just wondering, what are those other things? And I would like to see those things included in an idea like this to actually give people a more specific answer, a more specific method.
You sure will.
Awesome. I don't know. We still got like 13 minutes to before a half-hour mark. Not that we have to go all the way. I don't know if you want to wrap up or if you got something more. That was kind of where I'm at with this idea right now.
Um, well, I guess we can wrap up at this point of time. And what we were talking about today at first looks like two different topics, but if we take a look at those two topics, we may simply say let people do what they want.
You know what? You're right. I can't believe I didn't make that connection. But like legalizing drugs is another. It's another one of those. It's a perfect example of, hey, a lot of musicians and a lot of artists, they want to smoke weed. So if you let those people do it, or if you don't let those people do it, they will probably go somewhere where they can, because why not? So yeah, I totally agree with you on more freedom. Okay, I guess we'll move on to the conclusion then, all right? So that was the second half of our show. Fascinating stuff as well, always. And again, to our viewers, if any of these ideas speak for you, please support them in Egora so they can rise up, so more people can see them and more people can support them. Volodymyr, thank you very much for joining me today.
Likewise, thank you for hosting.
And thank you to those who joined us watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the show. But hey, if the ideas that we discussed today do not represent you well enough, please go ahead and create your own ideas in Egora. Tell others about those ideas. Come on this Egora Experience show to discuss your ideas with me, or best yet, start doing your own Egora Experience program. Thanks again, everyone, and see you in the Egora.
Bye.